So round 4 of the 2024 F1 season is in the books, which of course means it's now time for round 5 as F1 heads back to China for the first time since 2019. The Shanghai International Circuit playing host to its first race in a number of years, and hopefully it's going to be a good one. This is also of course the first sprint weekend of the year, meaning we get 2 races instead of 1. You'd think all the fans would love that, but after the past few years, clearly not. However, for this video, we're going to be taking a look at just how I think things are going to go on the Sunday. And of course, we'll be taking a look at how the dog Enzo thinks we're going to be doing on the Sunday as well, with his predictions as well as mine, as we take a look at our head-to-head series for this year. But without any more waffling, let's get into the video and to my F1 predictions for the 2024 Chinese Grand Prix. Now first up we have my Quali GOAT, still looking for a slightly better name for this, but I'm going to stick with it for now. In the past I've gone for people like Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc, one went well, one not so good. This time I've gone with Alex Albon. I feel like for Alex he's just generally due, we know he's a good driver, this year hasn't quite started amazingly well, admittedly the Williams isn't great, but I do think Alex is due for a good performance, and I feel like with not much practice time, it's those drivers who can really pull those laps out of the bag that are going to perform, and I feel like Alex fits that category quite well. Next we get into my qualifying fail, and not going to lie, I did have a bit of a tricky time picking someone here. However, I've gone with Oscar Piastri. Now before you all turn off of the video and tell me how much of an idiot I am, wait until at least Saturday to do that. Just hear me out with some reasoning. As I mentioned, China's the first sprint weekend of the year, which means there's only one practice session. Now F1's not been in China for a number of years, meaning that Oscar is one of the drivers who has no F1 experience at the track, at least that I'm aware of. And with just that 1 hour of practice before heading into the weekend, I just feel like Oscar might struggle a little bit. Couple that with the fact you have Lando Norris with your teammate, who's a notoriously good qualifier, I feel like it'll just make his performance look that little bit worse. Next up we have then my sneaky good, the driver that's not quite driver of the day but has still put in a really noteworthy performance. Now it would be cheesy and a bit cringe to go with the home driver for 2 races in a row. But that's exactly what I've done, as I put Zhou Guanyu in as my sneaky good driver for the Chinese Grand Prix. Now it may seem a bit strange, but I do think it does have an impact when a driver is racing at their home race, especially when someone like Zhou, as the first Chinese driver, his first time driving the Chinese Grand Prix, is really going to want to perform. And I feel like based on some of his form this year, he has shown he can deliver those better performances on those fringes of the top 10. You done? No. Okay. You finished now? Clearly not a fan of my Zhou Guanyu prediction then. Next we get on to sneaky bad, and I feel like this is often a tricky one because I've set myself up in the position of finding a driver who's not done so terrible that they get the fail of the day, but also they have to be bad enough to be noticeable. And in this one, I've gone with Fernando Alonso. Now don't get me wrong, Alonso, top driver, and most of the time I would expect a great performance, but I felt like something weird could just happen this weekend. Now let me run you through my thoughts. First off, the Aston Martin hasn't looked amazing, so I feel like if there's a slight change in that order, he could drop down a bit. You look at guys like Piastri and Russell that finished just behind him last time out. Now saying that, I do feel like I'm talking absolute nonsense, but I've gone with Fernando nonetheless. Honestly, it's just a bit of a gut feeling in this one. Next up then, we have driver of the day. Now it would be very easy to say Max Verstappen continuing on his winning ways, but instead I've gone with Nico Hülkenberg, someone further down the grid who is generally having a good year this time out. However, because it's the first sprint race, I feel like a lot of really strange things could happen throughout the weekend, and someone like Nico Hülkenberg, the way things have been going at Haas, is someone I feel like could take advantage. Then we get to my fail of the day, the driver who it just goes completely wrong. And for this one, I've gone with Valtteri Bottas. To be honest, at this rate, with the fail of the day, one of the 2 Sauber drivers could always be there given how their pit stops have gone this year, but I just feel like for Valtteri and first sprint race back in China, I just don't have those high expectations. And so for Valtteri, I feel like in China, it's just not going to work out. And then finally we get to my podium. Now it's back to a Red Bull 1-2 last weekend, however, this time I'm putting Sergio Perez in P3. Reason being, as I said I don't know how many times in this video, it is a sprint weekend, and so I feel like for Checo, someone who qualifying can often go wrong, you can often make a couple of mistakes, I feel like that would just push him enough to not be in that second spot. In that second spot, however, I've got Carlos Sainz. I was going to go with a toss-up between the Ferraris, but it seems like it's finally got to the point now where I'd pick Sainz over Leclerc. Even last time out in Japan, I still thought that Leclerc would do better. However, I think the form that Sainz has shown now has really convinced me that at this point, with that form, with how good he's been, I'd pick him over Leclerc for this particular race. And that of course leaves me with first spot, where I've gone with Lewis Hamilton. I'm joking, of course it's Max Verstappen. I think Lewis would be lucky with probably the top 8 at this point. But no, it's Max Verstappen, getting back to his winning ways in Japan, coming to a track where no one has much recent data. I feel like Red Bull have just done generally really well when we've come across those situations in the past where no one really knows how it's going to go, but with their current car and Max as well, they've just really performed. So yeah, Max P1. And then we get on to Enzo's predictions. As you can see in Japan last time out, I did that little bit better, outscoring Enzo 25 points to 17, meaning that on the season, it's currently now 2-2. When I started this season, I genuinely thought Enzo would have no chance, and yet it's me who's had to tie the series up. But getting into his choices for China, we're going to start with the bottom 10. Valtteri Bottas in 20th place, Logan Sargent in 19th, Esteban Ocon in 18th place, with Fernando Alonso in 17th. I'm honestly convinced at this point that Enzo has something against Fernando Alonso. So far this year, he's currently predicted him in 18th, 15th, 19th, 18th, and now 17th. I don't know what it is, but he has something out for that green number 14. Then in 16th, we move to Daniel Ricciardo, Kevin Magnussen in 15th, Pierre Gasly with what I would say is a pretty good performance for Alpine in 14th, Alex Albon 13th, Zhou Guanyu in 12th, and Lewis Hamilton in 11th in the bottom half of the grid. Am I surprised by Enzo's selection? Not really. Then we move into the top 10, and we're going to start with something that's a bit of a surprise here, as after initially choosing someone else, he goes for Lando Norris. Potentially a Norris-Hamilton incident somewhere in there, one place up there in P9, and he's gone with the other Aston Martin, Lance Stroll. Just to make a point here, Enzo has predicted Lance Stroll to finish ahead of Fernando Alonso in every single race. It's happened once. Then in P8, we move on to the Haas cars, and he's gone with Nico Hülkenberg. I mentioned in my predictions how I thought Hülkenberg could be in for a good drive, and I actually put him down as my driver of the day. So clearly in this one, Enzo's going along the same train of thought. Next up in P7, and we go with Yuki Tsunoda, continuing his good run of form, having picked up points in the last couple of races. P7 would equal his best of the year so far and really cement himself as a best of the rest driver. And then into P6, we have Oscar Piastri. I think this P6 position is going to sum up a lot of Piastri's year, and clearly Enzo thinks the same. Now into Enzo's top 5, and he's going to go for one of the Ferraris, but which one will it be? He's picked both of them in the past, however this one is going to be Carlos Sainz, number 55, that Enzo's putting in 5th place. Getting into 4th then, and with just Russell, Leclerc and the 2 Red Bulls remaining, who's it going to be? It's George Russell, number 63. And basically just M&M's spin bars here. Top 3 now, and with just the 2 Red Bulls and Leclerc remaining, it's the Verperlec from last year we have, and it's going to be Charles Leclerc in this one. Leclerc finds himself in 3rd place in the driver's standings, even though he's probably had a slightly disappointing start to the year, more based on where his teammates been. So while he's doing absolutely fine, he's 3rd place in the driver's championship, it still could be a little bit better, especially when you compare him to Carlos. That of course leaves a Red Bull 1-2, something I don't think Enzo's done so far this year. Will it be Verstappen the easy choice, or is Enzo going to go a bit risky? He's going a bit risky as he puts Max Verstappen in 2nd place for this one. To be fair, a few years away from China, coming back to the first sprint weekend of the year, I could see something potentially happening. Whether or not it's Sergio Perez to pick up the pieces though, that's another question. Regardless of how I may think this will go, Enzo has left one person left to be picked, and that is of course Sergio Perez, even though he is trying to make it literally as difficult as possible for himself to pick Sergio. Given there's only one bag left to be picked, he will eventually get there and pick the 2nd Red Bull driver. So there you have the predictions for the 2024 Chinese Grand Prix. Enzo's are on the left, mine are on the right. Let me know your thoughts in the comments if you agree or disagree, and how you're finding the series generally this year. But anyways, that is all for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, give it a thumbs up, get yourself subscribed to the channel, and until next time, take care.